The ballroom was packed with flashing cameras and loud voices as Hollywood's elite gathered for the annual awards night. I was there with Keanu Reeves and his mother Patricia Taylor, who had come as his date, looking elegant and proud. The evening was going smoothly until a sharp-tongued reporter from a well-known liberal media outlet stepped up to the microphone during a live Q&A session. With a smirk on her face and a tone full of arrogance, she pointed at Patricia and said, "So, Ms. Taylor, how does it feel to ride the success of your son's fame, considering your past as a costume designer isn't exactly headline-worthy?" The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. For a moment, there was a heavy silence. I glanced at Keanu. His smile was gone. His jaw clenched. He stepped forward calmly, took the mic, and looked the reporter dead in the eyes. "Let me tell you something about my mother," he began, voice steady but firm. "When I was a kid, she worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. She used to sew costumes late into the night while I slept on the floor. If I'm here today, it's because of her. So next time you want to tear someone down for attention, try doing it to me, not to the woman who built my world." The entire room went silent, and for a second, even the cameras stopped clicking. But what happened just a few minutes later left everyone completely stunned, and changed the entire mood of the night. Just when the room thought it had seen enough, the atmosphere shifted in a way no one expected. After Keanu's words echoed, through the hall there was a ripple of murmurs followed by something rare at such events. Silence, not out of awkwardness but deep respect. The reporter, clearly flustered, tried to brush off her comment with a forced laugh, saying, "Relax, it was just a joke." But the crowd wasn't laughing. Neither was I. You could feel a change in the air, like the moment before a storm hits. Patricia, who had remained composed, gently touched Keanu's arm and whispered, "It's okay, darling." But even she didn't expect what happened next. One of the top producers in the industry, who had quietly watched everything unfold, from the side suddenly stepped forward and asked for the mic. "Before we move on," he said, "I'd like to say something." He looked at Patricia and continued, "I've worked with many costume designers in my life. Your work in the 70s saved entire productions. In fact, the reason my father got his first major film funded was because of the authenticity your designs brought. I just wanted to say thank you." That producer's words ignited something. One after another, people in the room began standing up. Actors, directors, even competitors, sharing brief stories about Patricia's kindness, her hard work, and how she had quietly shaped parts of the industry without ever demanding attention. I watched Keanu's eyes glisten, and for the first time, the spotlight truly belonged to the woman who had always stood behind him. But just when things began to settle, another figure stepped into the light. A woman with a microphone and tears in her eyes, claiming she had something important to confess, something connected to Patricia's past that no one in that room was prepared to hear. All eyes turned to the woman walking slowly toward the front of the ballroom. She was in her early 40s, dressed simply, nothing flashy like the rest of the crowd. But her hands trembled slightly as she held the microphone. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight," she began, her voice shaky but sincere. "But after hearing Keanu defend his mother, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I stood near Keanu, watching him narrow his eyes in confusion. He didn't recognize her. Patricia looked puzzled too. The woman continued, "I don't know if you remember me, Ms. Taylor. My name is Elena. 30 years ago I was 15, homeless, alone. You found me sleeping behind a theater in Toronto. You didn't know me, but you gave me a sandwich, then a job helping you organize fabric in your studio. You let me stay in the back room when I had nowhere to go. You saved me from a life I didn't think I could escape." Patricia gasped softly, eyes filling with tears. Keanu looked stunned. "I never forgot what you did," Elena continued. "Because of you, I finished school. I got a degree in design. And today, I run a nonprofit that helps homeless teens find work through creative arts. All of it, every bit, started with your kindness." The room was silent, a different kind of silence now. The kind where people aren't just listening, they're feeling. Helena turned to the crowd, her voice growing stronger. "The world celebrates the actors, the fame, the big names, but tonight, let's remember the quiet heroes behind them. The ones who love without cameras watching. At that moment, everyone stood up, not for Keanu, not for the producer, but for Patricia Taylor. A long standing ovation erupted, and even the host of the show was wiping his eyes. But before Patricia could speak, a staff member rushed in with an urgent look on his face and whispered something in Keanu's ear. His smile dropped immediately. Without saying a word, Keanu grabbed my arm and hurried out of the ballroom. Something serious had just happened, something that would take us into the darkest part of the night, and I had no idea what we were about to walk into. As we stepped into the cold night air, Keanu's grip on my arm tightened. The event staffer, who had interrupted, leaned in and whispered again. They left this in the parking lot, said it was urgent. A security guard handed Keanu a plain white envelope with no markings except his name, printed in red ink. His hands, usually steady, trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside was a single photograph, one that made the color drain from his face. It was a picture of a young Keanu, maybe 9 or 10, standing beside a woman that wasn't Patricia, his biological mother, but another woman from a forgotten chapter in his life. On the back, written in messy handwriting, were the words, "Some truths can't stay buried forever." I had never seen Keanu look like that. Haunted, like the past, had just punched him in the chest. "I haven't seen her in over 40 years, he muttered. "She left without a word. I thought she was gone forever." I asked who the woman was, but he didn't answer. Instead, he handed me the photo and said, "We need to go somewhere. Now." We jumped into a black SUV, barely saying a word. I could feel his mind racing as he stared out the window, lost in thoughts too painful to share. Finally, he broke the silence. "That reporter tonight, she mentioned my father, didn't she? But she also brought up the wrong name on purpose. She knows something. This isn't about my mom's dress designs. Someone's trying to reopen a wound I buried long ago." The car turned into an unfamiliar neighborhood, run down, dimly lit. Keanu directed the driver to stop in front of a small, forgotten house. "This is where she lived last," he whispered. "If someone left that photo, they want me to remember what happened here." As he stepped out, the porch light flickered on by itself and the door creaked open slowly, as if someone had been expecting him all along. The inside of the house was frozen in time. Dust floated in the air like quiet ghosts and faded family. Photos lined the walls, none of which Keanu had seen in decades. As we stepped in, an old woman's voice echoed from the hallway. "I always knew you'd come back, just not like this." Keanu froze. The voice belonged to the woman in the photograph, the one he hadn't seen since childhood. She stepped into view, older now, hunched slightly with eyes full of a pain she never spoke of. "Why?" was all Keanu could ask, his voice raw. "Why did you leave me? Why didn't you say goodbye?" The woman, whose name was Sylvia, took a deep breath. "Because I wasn't allowed to say goodbye. Your father, he made choices that put both our lives at risk. The only way I could keep you safe was to disappear." Keanu's hands curled into fists, the silence between them sharp as glass. "All these years I thought you abandoned me," he said. "And now someone's sending me warnings?" Sylvia nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. "They found me a week ago. Someone from your father's past. They know who you are. And they're trying to hurt you through me." At that moment, a crash came from the back of the house. I turned, just in time to see a shadow dart past the window. Keanu sprang into action, rushing toward the back door, but it was already wide open. Whoever had been there was gone, but not without leaving another message. A small notebook was sitting on the table, its cover marked with the same red ink as the envelope earlier. Inside, a list of names, some crossed out. At the very bottom, Patricia Taylor. Next. Keanu's face went pale. This wasn't just a warning, it was a hit list. And the person who raised him, the woman who just got a standing ovation from an entire ballroom, was in danger. As he gripped the notebook, he looked at me with eyes full of fire. "We need to get back. Now." This isn't about me anymore, it's about her. But what we didn't know was that back at the hotel, someone had already gotten too close. The hotel's security cameras had gone dark just 10 minutes before we arrived. When we burst into the lobby, panic already buzzed through the air. Staff members looked nervous, whispering to each other while a shaken concierge told us there was a disturbance on the penthouse floor. We tried calling her room, but no answer. Keanu didn't wait. He sprinted toward the elevators, fury and fear flashing across his face. I followed close behind, heart pounding. As the elevator doors opened on the top floor, we were met by a strange silence, the kind that makes your skin crawl. The hallway lights flickered, and the door to Patricia's suite stood slightly open. Keanu pushed it gently. "Mom," he called. No answer. Inside, the suite looked untouched, elegant as always, until we noticed the overturned chair and the broken wine glass near the fireplace. On the wall, drawn in that same red ink, were 5 chilling words. "One mother isn't enough. Keanu." That was when Keanu noticed something else. His mother's cell phone on the floor, still recording a voice memo. He picked it up and pressed play. Patricia's voice came through, shaky. "Keanu, someone came to the door. Said they were from the foundation, but something feels off. If anything happens, remember what I told you about the past. Not all truths were mine to tell." The message ended with a muffled crash. Keanu's jaw clenched. "They took her," he whispered. But before I could ask who they were, he turned to me, eyes burning with determination. "This all goes back to him, my real father. He was into things I never understood. Power, influence, silence. And now someone's using it all to punish me for walking away from that life." I asked, "But why now?" Keanu's voice dropped. "Because I refused to fund the project. They wanted my name behind it, wanted to use my money to cover up something dark. And I said no." He pulled out the notebook again, flipping to a page in the middle that we hadn't noticed. There was a symbol drawn there. Strange, ancient-looking, almost cult-like. Beneath it, "Initiate or sacrifice." Keanu looked at me. "We have to find the one person who warned me about this months ago, the man I didn't believe. If he's right, this is just the beginning." The man's name was Elias Ward, a former intelligence operative turned ghost. Years ago, he had approached Keanu with wild claims about a secret society tied to Hollywood elites, hidden agendas masked by philanthropy, and a generational network that punished those who refused to play along. Keanu had laughed it off then, thinking Elias was just another conspiracy addict. But now, with his mother taken and a cryptic symbol haunting his every step, he didn't think it was so funny. The phone rang twice before Elias picked up, his voice a low whisper. "I told you they'd come." Keanu wasted no time. "Where are you?" The response, "The place your father took you when you were 6. Come alone. Don't bring your shadow." I knew he meant me. "He wants me to stay behind," I said, trying not to sound wounded. Keanu paused, looked me in the eye, and replied, "No, we go together. That's how we started this. That's how we end it." We drove in silence to an abandoned observatory on the city's edge, hidden behind layers of trees and rusted gates. The moment we arrived, a figure stepped out from the shadows. Elias, older, unshaven, eyes alert like a man who sleeps with one eye open. He led us inside, down to a basement lined with old files and flickering lights. On the table were photographs, coded letters and maps that detailed something far beyond what we imagined. "This group," Elias began, "was formed over a century ago. They call themselves the Veil. Their job is to control narratives, erase opposition, and ensure no star shines too bright without their permission. Your father was once their most valuable asset, but he tried to get out and he paid for it." Keanu's face went cold. "And now they want me to take his place." Elias nodded. "Or be erased." He handed Keanu a sealed envelope. "This was left for you years ago. Your father knew this moment would come." Keanu opened it slowly. Inside was a key and a single piece of paper. It said, "The truth you seek is buried in fire. Find the orphan file." None of us knew what it meant yet. But outside the observatory, someone watched through a broken lens, their phone pressed to their ear. "They found the key," the voice whispered. "Initiate the next phase and make sure he loses someone he loves next." Keanu hesitated before opening it. His hands trembled slightly, not out of fear, but something deeper, dread. Inside, wrapped in black cloth, was a VHS tape, half melted. We rushed to Elias's old equipment stash and he managed to salvage a working player. As the tape played, a grainy image flickered on screen. Patricia, tied to a chair in a dim room with concrete walls. Her voice was shaky but calm. "Keanu, you have until midnight. Bring the key. Bring the file. Alone." Then a deep voice interrupted. "One mother for one legacy. The veil must endure." The screen cut to black. Keanu stood frozen. Then, he turned to Elias. "What is the orphan file?" Elias exhaled slowly. It was a ledger, a record of every recruit, every deal, every cover-up. The veil's sins, all in one place. Your father was the last one to possess it, until he vanished. "He hid it, somewhere even they couldn't reach," Keanu whispered. "In fire." "He hid it in fire." His eyes widened. "The crematorium. The one he built but never used." Elias nodded. "The Memorial Garden of Light? No one ever knew it was a vault." We raced across the city to a forgotten building wrapped in vines and silence. Inside, hidden beneath a fake ash chamber, we found a fireproof compartment. Keanu used the strange key to unlock it, and there it was, a thick, sealed binder with the words, "If this ever sees daylight, the veil burns." But before we could celebrate, we heard tires screeching outside. Elias peeked through the cracks. "They're here." A dozen black cars had surrounded the building. Men in suits, all with earpieces, moved in formation. One of them carried a tablet showing a live feed of Patricia, crying softly. A synthesized voice came through. "You have the file, we have the mother. Trade before the clock dies or both are erased." Keanu's hands clenched into fists. "They want me to choose again, legacy or blood." But I knew Keanu. He wouldn't choose. He'd rewrite the rules. "Let's make them regret thinking they ever owned you," I said. He looked at me with a slight grin, and then his eyes locked on Elias. "You still got explosives?" Elias smirked. "I never stopped making them." As we began preparing our counterstrike, we had no idea. One of us wouldn't make it back. We had only a few hours left before midnight. As Elias rigged the crematorium with a web of precise explosives, Keanu stared at the orphan file like it held the weight of every decision he'd ever made. "They built their empire by erasing people," he said. "But if we go through with this, we become the fire they can't put out." He handed me a flash drive. "This holds the digital copy. If I don't make it, you leak it everywhere. Newsrooms, social media, even underground networks." Elias looked up. "They'll come for you both after this." Keanu smiled faintly. "Then we make our stand count." As the sun dipped behind the city skyline, we made our move. Keanu drove alone to the exchange point, an abandoned water plant on the edge of town. I watched from a nearby rooftop with a sniper scope, while Elias stayed behind, ready to trigger the backup blast if things went wrong. At exactly midnight, a black van rolled in. Two masked men stepped out, dragging Patricia forward. She looked weak, bruised, but when her eyes found Keanu, they widened with something deeper than fear. Hope. The leader, a tall figure in a gray suit with cold eyes, stepped out and said, "You brought it?" Keanu held up the file. "Now let her go." The man laughed. "You think you dictate terms? This is a cleansing, Mr. Reeves. You deliver the poison, then you die with it." And that's when I saw it. 4 snipers on the surrounding rooftops. They never intended to let Keanu walk away. I radioed in. They're going to shoot. Now or never. But Keanu didn't flinch. He raised his hands slowly, holding the file above his head, and said loudly, "This ends now." Suddenly, Elias's voice crackled in my earpiece. "We've been found. I have to trigger the failsafe." I screamed, "No, we're not ready." But it was too late. The ground beneath the water plant trembled as a low rumble echoed across the city. Explosions lit up the night like fireworks. In the chaos, I fired at the rooftop snipers. Keanu tackled Patricia to the ground, and the van erupted in flames. But as dust filled the air, I spotted something that made my heart stop. Elias running toward the van holding a detonator. He looked straight at me through the smoke, nodded once, and vanished in a ball of fire. He took out the core team of the Veil with him. I rushed down as fast as I could. Amid the wreckage, I found Keanu holding Patricia in his arms, both coughing, burned but alive. "We lost him," I said. Keanu closed his eyes and whispered, "He gave us tomorrow." But just as we thought it was over, a voice echoed from the shadows behind us, calm and cruel. "You really think this was all of us?" We turned, and standing there was a woman in white, the true leader of the Veil. She smiled slowly. The file was just the beginning. Everything we'd done had only awakened a darker war. The woman in white stepped forward, her heels silent, against the broken ground, her presence ice-cold and commanding. "You think burning one facility, exposing one file, ends us?" she said, her voice as calm as winter. Keanu stood between her and Patricia, blood dripping down his face, yet his eyes steady. "No," he said quietly. "But it exposes your shadow, and shadows die in light." She smirked and snapped her fingers. From the fog emerged more operatives, dozens, surrounding us in seconds. I raised my weapon, heart pounding, but we were outnumbered. "You wanted to shake the world," she whispered. "You just gave it back to us in pieces." Just then, a low hum began in the distance. I looked up and saw dozens of drones flying overhead, each projecting a live feed to every major network, every phone, every screen. Elias had planned for this. The moment the woman spoke, every word went live to the world. Her face, her threat, her confession. She realized too late. "No," she hissed. Panic rippled through her operatives. Sirens began wailing in the distance. FBI, Interpol, every agency Elias had tipped off. One by one, her people ran. She reached for her gun, but Keanu was faster. A single shot dropped her to her knees. "The world just saw you," he said. "They won't forget." As agents stormed the scene, we fell to our knees, exhausted. Patricia was safe. The Veil was exposed. Elias's plan had worked. A week later, we stood by his grave, silence surrounding us. "He wasn't just a hacker," I said, laying down a lemon on the headstone, the symbol of our fight. "He was the reason we have a future." Keanu placed a hand on my shoulder. He was family. As we walked away, news broadcasts played around the world. People were rising, questioning the systems they once trusted. We didn't destroy the world's lies. We lit the fire that would burn through them. And from those ashes, something honest would rise. Please subscribe channel for Keanu Reeves respect. Thanks.